Today, we'll be looking at some shocking statistics about retirement savings in America that most financial advisors don't really talk about. In almost 15 years of helping people and working with retirees, I've discovered that many people are making retirement decisions based on incomplete information or in some cases misleading averages that don't really reflect their actual situation. If you're new to the channel, my name's Justin. I own a financial planning firm in Pennsylvania where we work with retirees from all over the country, helping them make smart financial decisions. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, to share the retirement statistics that matter the most and show you how to use this information to create more confidence in your retirement plan, regardless of where you stand today. So let's dig right into it. So one of the most striking patterns that I've discovered is what I call the retirement confidence paradox. And this is a phenomenon that explains why so many Americans feel anxious about retirement, despite evidence suggesting that they really shouldn't. So the retirement confidence paradox is the big disconnect between what pre-retirees expect retirement to be like and what current retirees actually experience. So this gap creates a lot of unnecessary anxiety and often delays retirement for years beyond what's actually necessary, and let me show you why. So data shows us that only 31% of pre-retirees think that they're on track, yet 70% of current retirees report having enough or even more than enough. So there's a big disconnect between perceived needs and what retirees actually spend. And I can confirm this to be the case working with real retirees as well. There's always that fear of the unknown and thinking that they're going to need a certain amount of money because that's what they're used to. And then the reality of being retired for a year or two or three and saying, no, I'm perfectly happy with what I have. You know, we have plenty of monthly income. We have our investments. Things are going well. So there's always a little bit of disconnect there. This gap just doesn't exist in statistics. It fundamentally affects America's relationship with retirement planning. And here's why. Almost 70 to 71% of retirees are worried about their retirement savings. Makes sense. I totally empathize. You're making a huge transition, so you want to make sure that you get that part correct. But this fear greatly affects retirement decisions, causes people to postpone when they're going to retire, when maybe they could actually retire and maybe they're actually in a great place to retire. I've talked about this before. People are delaying retirement for 3, 4, 5 years when they really didn't have to. And where does this anxiety come from? Well, I think it's driven by 3 major misunderstandings about retirement reality. Now, before we move on, I know a lot of this information can be surprising, especially when it's so widely circulated. So if you're concerned about how you've been planning and you want some feedback on where you're at for retirement, click the link in the description below. It'll take you to a questionnaire. Fill it out. I will send you back a personalized video showing how you can prepare for retirement based on your specific situation. And so here are the 3 retirement reality gaps. Number 1 is income sources. So many people don't fully take into account that Social Security is going to count for 30 to sometimes 50% or more of their income in retirement, and they'll get that fact a little bit incorrect and think that they need a lot more, or that they need to provide more than they really do. And this can also be different if there's a pension involved as well. So if there's a pension on top of Social Security, there's a lot of clients that I've worked with that have both, and they've realized once they hit retirement that they have plenty of monthly income coming in, and they didn't even really need to worry about taking much from their investment accounts because the pension and Social Security covered their day-to-day needs. But this income reality gap is also compounded by a second critical misunderstanding, and that's the spending patterns. So about half of retirees spend around $2,000 to $3,000 monthly on average, and that tends to decline throughout retirement. So normal retiree spending can start at a somewhat higher level, and then it starts to go down as retirees get more comfortable with being in retirement. They've done some of the things they want to do, so then they just kind of get into more of a spending habits. So expenses kind of level off, and then maybe near the end of retirement they go back up if there's medical costs or long-term care costs. So we call it a retirement spending smile, and it just kind of moves in a smile curve, and we find that that's very common. But the point of knowing that is that these patterns, or retiree spending patterns, usually dramatically decrease and reduce the need for having a much larger savings amount than maybe previously thought. So it might very well be the case that you don't need to have as much of a large amount saved as you might think that you do, because it's possible that maybe you're not accounting for your income, other income sources, or that your spending may level off. And beyond these financial gaps, perhaps the most harmful misconception is who retirement planning advice actually works for. And the last reality gap are the demographic reality. So depending upon where you're at and where you actually live in the country and cost of living, some of the average retirement numbers aren't going to make any sense at all. So for example, if you live in a high income or high cost of living state like California, New York, maybe you do need a higher amount of income and a higher level of savings than somebody who lives, for example, here in central Pennsylvania, where cost of living is relatively low. So that's something that you have to take into account. So again, all these retirement planning numbers are all so general. Everything needs to be tailored to you specifically for it to actually make sense and be relevant. And now these three reality gaps reveal something very interesting about what actually determines retirement satisfaction. Because these misunderstandings point to a surprising truth. The factors that really determine retirement comfort are fundamentally different than what most people really focus on. So research from actual retiree experience and real-life application and real-life experience reveals what truly creates retirement confidence, and I'm going to share these with you. So here are the true drivers of retirement satisfaction. And number one is income predictability, or the income predictability impact. So we've seen that having a source of guaranteed income, whether it's Social Security, pension, whether a client's pulling dividends off of their portfolio, maybe they have an annuity if that makes sense for them, but having guaranteed income or a source of it greatly reduces anxiety. And even if there's big amounts of savings or low amounts of savings, I've seen clients who have very little actual retirement savings, but because they have a pension, maybe both spouses have a pension, Social Security, they have plenty of monthly income, even to the point where they're actually saving money in retirement. So they have much less stress than some others who might have built up $1 million or $2 million in their 401ks or investment accounts that actually have to pull withdrawals off and live on that money. And beyond income reliability, another critical satisfaction driver is often overlooked too, and that is social connections, purpose in retirement. And I've talked about this before as well. You don't want to just retire from something and be like, oh, I got to get out of my job. I hate it. It's terrible. And I've seen that happen. And then after about a month, then there's a kind of like okay, what do I do now kind of period, which can lead to depression in a lot of cases. So you want to have something to retire towards. You still want to keep those social connections, sense of purpose, sense of achievement. All those things are very critical in the retirement plan, not just the financial stuff. And I'm talking about health as well. Please take care of yourself. Please pay attention to your health. I've seen many people just drag themselves to that retirement finish line, almost like a marathon runner, right? They're just pushing themselves, just staggering across the finish line. They finish the marathon, but then they're so beat up that they need a week or 2 weeks to recover. And I see that happen in retirement. People will push themselves for years to finish the marathon, get to the finish line. Then they get hit with a bunch of health problems and they can't enjoy the wealth that they built. So prioritizing your health is a big one. Health is truly wealth. Don't neglect that. Make sure you're paying attention to your health so you can enjoy a long and enjoyable retirement. And these insights that I've shared reveal a transformative approach to retirement planning. And it explains why so many retirees find satisfaction despite even having what many would consider modest resources. And this really completely changes how we define retirement needs. And we call this the reliability principle. So a lot of retirement confidence comes from reliability and not just maximum accumulation. So again, as I mentioned before, a lot of confidence can come from that reliable income and knowing that that income is going to be there, that matches actual expenses, not just having that big savings account. And those who have modest savings, I've seen have lived very, very, very well because they have a source of reliable income and they know that they don't have to worry month to month, depending on what's going on in the stock market, if they're going to have the income that they need. And this principle fundamentally changes retirement planning approach because the traditional approach is you need to save, build up $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and then start pulling from it. But a lot of people just aren't familiar with how that's all structured, how that's supposed to work, how much they're supposed to pull, how much they're going to actually need to pull from it to actually feel happy and feel fulfilled. I find a lot of people will overestimate how much they need to take from it. And if they do that, even in the first couple years, they'll quickly start to scale back and realize, hey, we're not really spending as much money as we thought that we would. We really thought we needed a lot more than we did. And that experience just kind of highlights and shows how things actually work in reality instead of what's necessarily projected to people before retirement. And so I've really found that, success in retirement depends on the satisfaction equation. Satisfaction equals reality minus expectations, right? So having the appropriate expectations for going into retirement can greatly influence your happiness level or your discomfort level on the other end. And this can create contentment regardless of how much wealth that you've built. And here are some actionable strategies that anybody can take to implement this for your retirement. So you can recalibrate retirement expectations using real data, not just stuff that might appear in a social media post or article somewhere. You want to compare your expected retirement experience with data that's relevant to your situation, people that are similar to you in your demographic, in your cost of living area. You want to focus on the 70% of retirees who report living comfortably on the income that they have, and then develop monthly realistic spending projections based on those actual retiree patterns. As we talked about before, you want to create a retirement income reliability framework. So focused on those guaranteed income sources first, Social Security, pensions. If you don't have a pension, you have Social Security. I know you might be thinking, well, I can't rely on Social Security. I don't know if it's going to be there for me. I made another video on this the other week. If you want to check it out, I talk all about Social Security and how I don't feel it's realistic to think that it won't be there for you. But understand that your Social Security benefits will likely provide somewhere from 40 to 60% of that reliable retirement income that you're going to need. And then you want to implement a demographic-based planning strategy. Again, going back to the different parts of the country that you might live in. For example, let's say you've been saving for retirement in New York, but then you're going to move to Pennsylvania later on. Well, that's going to help you a lot because Pennsylvania doesn't tax most retirement income, whereas things may be different in New York. Cost of living is going to be much, much less if you're in central Pennsylvania or more rural Pennsylvania. So those types of factors can have a big impact and vice versa as well. If you're saving for retirement in a lower cost of living area, but you want to move to a higher one, you definitely need to take that into account in your plan as well. And then you also want to adopt a retirement spending clarity approach. And what I mean about that is making sure you know what your monthly costs are. I find that most retirees don't get this correct initially. They kind of know what they spend before retirement, but not really. So having a very accurate monthly budget to know how much what your spending needs are will help you out greatly. And also understanding that retirement spending usually starts to decrease by about 1 to 1.5% annually after age 70. In some cases, I've seen it decrease a lot more. Some retirees spending will slow down dramatically, especially after they've done those bucket list items. So, planning for spending pattern changes throughout retirement, in those different phases, those will be very helpful to incorporate in the plan as well. And then finally, we want to create a retirement confidence framework, right? We want to create clear contingency plans for major retirement risks, right? You want to stress test your plan. Make sure it's going to hold up if something doesn't go the way that you want it to. Make sure there's financial guardrails there that signal when adjustments need to be made, whether that's changes in your spending habits, right? If you're following the 4% rule or something like that, know when those times are that you should adjust your spending and making sure that money will last throughout your lifetime. So now that we've talked about some pointers on how to make sure your retirement can be a little more stress-free, more targeted and tailored to you, here's some mistakes you can avoid along the way. So one of the mistakes I see is relying on misleading averages. I've touched on that a little bit, but comparing yourself to the average situation And that can be a big trap. It can keep you working way longer than you actually need to. It can also make you just feel bad unnecessarily. You could actually be way ahead of your target, but comparing yourself to someone else makes you feel like you're losing the battle, and that may not necessarily be true. Another one is misunderstanding the retirement income sources. Right? We don't want to underestimate the importance of Social Security, which again provides about 60% of most retirees' income in retirement. And we don't want to overemphasize the 401k IRA picture, especially since in many cases that money is going to be taxed. So you actually have to take out more than you think to net the money that you need. Another mistake to avoid is overestimating retirement expenses and assuming that the current expenses you have will remain constant throughout your retirement, especially if you're starting to draw up your plans now a couple years from retirement and basing it on the salary you have now. Remember that the salary that you have now, there's going to be a bunch of expenses subtracted from that, right? If you make $100,000 and right now and you're used to living on that, well, in retirement, you don't have FICA taxes anymore. So you can take 7.65% off of that. You're no longer saving for retirement. If you're doing a 20% contribution towards your 401k, that's another $20,000. So you might actually only need about $70,000 in net income when you're used to 100. So a lot of times there's a big gap and misunderstanding between how much income you're actually going to need. And the last mistake, making decisions based on fear rather than relevant data. Delaying retirement unnecessarily due to just generalized anxiety, making impulsive financial product or investment decisions just based on media coverage. Please don't make decisions based on short-term things that are happening in the market or news that you see on the media. I've seen this many times, how if the stock market's doing well in the morning, there'll be articles that say, oh, here's why you should invest. And then in the same day, if the stock market happened to go bad, on the same website, it'll just be why a crash is coming, why you should protect your money. It's all noise. Do not get caught in that trap. And then, of course, comparing, again, your situation to others without understanding their full circumstances. And so now you understand why the shocking gaps between retirement expectations and reality can create opportunities for more confident retirement planning. The key isn't necessarily just saving more. It's understanding what actually determines retirement comfort and focusing your efforts there and having an individualized, tailored plan for you. And if you're concerned about your strategy, if you want a tailored plan, click the first link in the description below, fill out a quick questionnaire that I created. Afterward, I will send over a personalized video highlighting any areas of opportunity with actionable steps to create you a more stable retirement. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.